Regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, much of the attention has been focused on Washington, D.C. and the presidential inauguration. A lot of cultural issues and political issues have been brought up over the course of the last several days. A lot of people on one side and a lot of people on the other. One thing that has stood out very strong to me, one thing that's just been very right up in my face, is this idea of family. And there are lots of families involved with this election, with what's going on politically. And I'm not really going to commentate on what you're probably expecting me to. What I do want to touch on is just the general idea of family. And I want to look at a man like J.D. Vance. Regardless of where you stand on the issues, you have to be able to look at a man like J.D. Vance and his family, and it should move you. It should stir you a little bit. If you haven't ever read it, I highly recommend reading or listening to the audiobook of Hillbilly Elegy, where it talks about his past. Right? There's very little in there that's about politics. Hardly anything at all touches on it. But it's a story of an American family. More importantly, it's a story of an American family that just about any one of us could end up knowing. Family from the rural backwoods of Appalachia. A story from rural backwoods America. Story of abuse, story of drugs, story of abandonment, violence, secrets, lies, and most importantly, restoration. J.D. Vance was raised by his grandma, or his Meemaw. If you've ever read the book, you're very familiar with Meemaw. His mom was in and out of his life and very abusive and was a drug addict for most of his life. Well, his Meemaw died a few years back, and she didn't get to see him reach this incredible success of becoming Vice President of the United States, second most powerful man in America, could be the most second powerful man in the world, and a relatively young man at only age 40. And he's overcome a lot. And again, I don't care who you are, I don't care where you stand on things. That man has come through a lot. And he knows the plight, and he knows the story of the average man. And one thing that's not getting a lot of coverage is the idea that his mom was at the presidential inauguration. His mom, the day before the presidential inauguration, his mom celebrated 10 years clean and sober. And again, I don't care who you are. That's one hell of a accomplishment. You know some of my history. You know myself that I have 8 years clean and sober. So she's got more clean time than I do. And so I can relate. I can relate to her story, and I can relate to JD's story. And to see him at that inauguration, and to see him happily married with 3 beautiful children who are going through a lot. I mean, it was one heck of a day for them. I know that for sure. It's a long day, and those kids were pretty well behaved. And pretty much everyone that I saw interact with them they were very nice. They just looked at those kids like they were just part of the family. I thought that was a beautiful thing. And it got me thinking about my own family a little bit. I've touched on some heavy topics over the course of the last couple of months, really, with all the things that have happened and all the stories that I've been through. So I wanted to kind of lighten things up a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about my family and some of the lessons that I've learned from my family, and maybe some lessons that we can all learn from family. Before we jump into that, though, I just want to read a couple of scriptures. I want to read this one. And it says, and it's Proverbs 22:6, and it says, "Train up a child in the way that he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it." Generations and passing things on is a very important biblical concept. There are sections of scripture that talk about blessings and cursings that are passed down to generations. And we all get things from our family. We have genetic traits that are passed on to us. Height, hair color, eye color, receding hairlines. All that stuff is passed on to us. That stuff we don't have control over. We also get habits. We get character traits, character qualities, character faults that are passed on to us from generations as well. But regardless of any of that, we're still responsible for the choices and the decisions that we make. Regardless of who our mom or dad was, or aunts, uncles, or cousins, or however many generations back. Yeah, those things all affect us. But we are still responsible for the actions and the consequences of our actions that we have today. So I want to talk a little bit about what it was like growing up as a Glanville. First of all, I don't know that I've ever done this, but I have 3 brothers. I have my older brother, David. I have my twin brother, Dan. And I have my younger brother, Peter. And then I have an older sister named Ann. She's the one that adopted my kids. We were raised pretty well. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail. I'm going to give you a couple of characteristics of our family. Some things that you could generally use to describe our family. And then I'm going to tell a story that's actually pretty cool and kind of epitomizes how we grew up. One thing that people always say about Glanvilles is that we're thinkers. We sometimes overthink, but we always at least think through issues. Very few people have ever been able to just tell us this is what you're supposed to do, and then you go do it. We question things. We come to conclusions. We come to our own conclusions. And so that's one character trait, is that we think a little bit deeper than the average person. And that leads me to the second point that I want to make about being in Glanville. And that is that we'll think through things, and then we'll come to a conclusion and we'll come to a decision. But we're going to be firm on our decision. And we're going to stick by that decision no matter what. Regardless of what's going on around us, we're going to stick to our decision. And we're going to stick to the choices and decisions to be with certain people and in certain places. So we're fiercely loyal as well. We're thinkers, but we're also resourceful. So we might take a little longer to figure out a problem, but we're going to work through that problem and we're going to get through it no matter what. I can think of a bunch of examples of how that came up as we were all growing up. I'm going to tell you one story. But before I do that, I have a special guest. And so he's going to come on here and he's going to talk for a few minutes. And before he does, take a look down in the description. Look at my social media. If you want to hear a little bit more about what I'm about, like I got a bunch of stories about family and I got a bunch of stories about stuff, this, that, and the other thing, my transformation journey and the struggles that I've been down, the road that I've been down. So if you're interested in any of that, check out down in the description. Anyway, here's my special guest.
Hey, everybody. This is the better-looking version of the Dangerous Gentleman. I actually am his brother, twin brother, if you can't tell, and commonly referred to as Lieutenant Dan. Though I was never actually a lieutenant in the Army. I was in the Army, but not a lieutenant. When Drew wanted to share some things about what it means to be a Glanville, a couple of things came to mind. I would say we're thinkers. We love to think and talk. We can get kind of intellectual sometimes, but we do like to just think. Like me and my Drew we do a lot of walks, just on our headset and go. We get into those times, we get big ideas. So sometimes there's big ideas that come out. We're always thinking about something bigger, something about what's next. Another one would be question askers. We ask questions and we don't just accept the status quo all the time. This can be good and bad, obviously, but we can ask a lot of questions. And sometimes it takes, like we moved to Washington years ago, I remember, to a community. It took about 3 or 4 years of me not accepting what was going on, asking questions, challenging things, before I went, okay, this is good. And now I have lifelong friends there. and don't regret any of that time. But it took a couple of years to accept that because I just had a lot of questions. I'm kind of in a little bit of that journey right now. And another one would be, a hallmark would be our faith, our believers in Jesus Christ. We all have gone to church pretty much our whole lives. In fact, my sister and brother-in-law started their own church now. Little community church up there where a lot of my family is from. And they just do great things, really close, tight-knit, all about relationships and building for the future. Again, thinking big. And we love each other. Don't spend hours and hours on the phone, but we genuinely enjoy spending time with each other. A fun thing would be, we say we like to play games, card games, board games, just anything that's kind of relational. So, like Christmas, we have a big time at Christmas, and we play games for hours and hours and hours, and do White Elephant and all that. So those things is the big question askers, thinkers, family, and followers of Jesus. All right, enjoy.
So this week, as I was thinking about family and different things, one story and what it means to be in Glanville, what it means to be a member of our family, it reminded me of this story. I was, 16, 17 years old at the time. I had worked a little bit in construction, had a little bit of experience, but mostly just kind of worked around the farm and done stuff like that. Well, my mom, we had bought this old house with this old nasty water heater in it. And somehow I got elected to be the person that was going to install the new water heater. I've never done this before. I've never put in a water heater before. It's got like the copper tubing, and with copper tubing, you have the pieces that get connected together. There's this stuff called flux that you put on it, and then you melt this solder on it to make a nice tight seal. And I've never done that before. But I was like, hey, we can't afford to pay someone to put this water heater in, so someone's got to do it. So I learned on the fly. So I start putting all these pipes together, and I'm cutting and I'm measuring, and I'm getting the right flanges and the right valves and the right all the different things. And I get it all hooked up like miraculously. It probably would have taken someone who knew what they were doing about half as long as I did. But still, like I said, I'm going to think through this, and I'm going to figure it out, and we're going to get this done regardless. And so I get this whole thing put together, and I connected the last piece, and I was like, sweet. So this is where the story gets interesting. So I went to go turn on the water, and there was one spot, and it turned out, I believe it was the very first joint that I had ever put together. There was a leak in it. It just so happened that it was also behind a bunch of other things because it was the first one. And because I'm thinking this through as I go, had I thought through it maybe a little bit more, I wouldn't have necessarily done it this way. But here I am now. And the situation is what the situation is. And I'm reaching my hand through, and I can't see, so I'm blinded back there, and I have to hold the end of the solder in one hand, and I have to hold the torch to melt the solder in the other. And I'm reaching through pipes that my hands can barely fit through. And I'm holding this wire in one hand, and I'm holding a blowtorch in the other. And I'm trying to get this joint. And I worked on it for a few minutes. Turn the water on. Still leaking. Tried again for a few minutes. Still leaking. And one of my brothers walks through, and they're like, hey, how's it going? I said, well, I could really use another set of hands. And so one of my brothers then, I think it was my brother Peter, my younger brother, had come along. And now one of us is holding the wire, and one of us is holding the torch. We still can't see back there because there's the refrigerator is right here, and the pipes, and it's the way everything is. And so, we try this, and we're working on it for a few minutes, and we're like, we thought we had it. We turned on the water. Nope, didn't have it. So we're trying to figure this out, and we're trying to figure this out, and trying to figure this out. And then my brother Dan walks in, and my brother Dan was, at the time, he was learning videography, and he was learning how to use a video camera. So we had a video camera. We're like, hey, I wonder if we could hold the video camera down. We mounted the tripod. We mounted the video camera on the tripod, and we're trying to hold this video camera back there. And then we that was back in the day where you had to run wires, and we had this little miniature TV monitor. And so we could hook the video camera up to the TV monitor and point the camera at the back of this pipe. And then we could look one way and watch the screen where we were working, like we're performing surgery. But the only way we could get the right angle on it was my brother Dan had to climb up on top of the refrigerator, extend the tripod down with the video camera mounted on the end and the wires leading over to the TV monitor. So he had to lay on top of the refrigerator with his feet dangling off of one side, balanced precariously on top of this thing. And he lowered the video camera down behind the pipe. And then we had to tell him, all right, you're in the right spot. Then he had to hold perfectly still. And then I had to hold the wire and watch the monitor. And Peter had to hold the blowtorch on the other side and watch the monitor, not burn ourselves. And now by this time we've run through almost all of the wire now. So now we're running out of material. So now we're down to our last one or two chances. And so again, my brother's on top of the refrigerator. I'm reaching down behind with the wire, and my other brother is holding the blowtorch, and we're all watching the camera. We're all watching the video feed, and we're working this thing. And we did it. We thought we had it. And then we went to go check, turned the water back on, and boom, no leaks. We were pretty happy. We were pretty stoked. But that was just an example to me of how our family we thought through the situation. We realized we needed to get this done, and we did it. And it's just a great example of the ingenuity, the resourcefulness, and the loyalty and the support that our family could show for each other. So my encouragement for you for this week is to spend a little time thinking about the idea of family, and not just family in general, but your family specifically, and write out a sentence that says, what does it mean to be and fill in your last name, what it likes to be a Miller, what it likes to be a Johnson, what it likes to be a whatever your last name is. Spend a few minutes in reflection and come up with a few words or a sentence that describes what it's like to be you and to have grown up in your family. And spend a few minutes thinking about really if that's what you want to be, or if there's things about that you might want to change. And just for fun, try to think of that story that epitomizes all of those things about you and your family. We all have them. I just told you one of the ones of mine, and I could think of more, but that was just the first one that came to mind. Okay? So think through what it means to be whatever your last name is, and a story that goes along with it. And drop those down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you a little bit about it. This is a topic that I'm very passionate about, and I'd love to hear from you. So drop a comment, like, share, subscribe, check the social media, do all the things. I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
So if you like this content, please give it a rating, a review, and share it with your friends. Also, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about me and what I'm all about and what I can maybe do for you, check out my website at thedangerousgentleman.org. That's thedangerousgentleman.org. Thank you for listening.